Hello, fourth graders. It's Mr. Remedies coming to you from Fairy Miss Jewel with today's mini lesson in reading language arts. Today, our mini lesson is all about how the setting can be real or imagined in this time, present day, or sometime in the past, whichever way makes it look good. All right. As always, we have a learning goal we're trying to get accomplished today. That learning goal is that we are learning to notice that settings can be familiar or distant in time and place from our own experiences. Right? A real fancy way of just saying that we're trying to figure out and learn really how to notice that the settings of stories can be real or imagined, or they can be in this time or in the past, but they can be very different from our experiences. Okay? In order to be successful at this, I would really love for y'all to be able to say some I can statements. Like I know the difference between real and imagined, and I know the difference between past and modern times. If you know the difference between those things, you will be A-okay today. Let's move on to some examples. Let's learn how to do this thing. So let's take a look at an example of how to determine where a story takes place and if that place is real or imagined. Okay. So as you can see on the screen, we're going to go back to our awesome little story, Snook Alone. Remember, Snook is the dog, a little friend to Abba Jacob. He accompanies him across his daily going-ons, and unfortunately, Snook gets marooned on an island, right? And if you remember in there, that island has a very, very specific name. It takes place on Avakir Island. Now, I want to know if the author, Marilyn Nelson, just made up this name, or if this is an actual real island. Okay? A quick little Google search will show me that this is a real island. This is an island, depending on the spelling, this is either an island in the Indian Ocean close to Africa, or it's in the North Atlantic close to Ireland. But either way, it's a real island. Boom, real place, real place. So when stories are set in real places, it kind of adds to the believability of the story. All right, let's move on to another example. Shall we? We shall. All right, for A Symphony of Whales, I want to determine whether the story is in a real place or an imagined place. Hey, now, if you notice this story, if you remember, this story takes place in a place that's very cold. It takes place near the ocean because it is about whales. But there is a descriptive passage that we talked about in a previous lesson where the bay was surrounded by ice and snow. It's not really explicitly told where exactly the story is taking place, but there are mentions of Russian ships off the coast, so I can only imagine that this takes place in Russia because I did a great job listening in geography class. I know that if some place is cold, it's in Russia and it's near the coast, it's probably in an area of Russia called Siberia. So I think that is a real place. All right, let's move on to another example. Great story. Okay. All right, one from way back in our year this year. We are talking about Better Than You. This time we're going to amp it up. We're going to talk about where the story takes place and when the story takes place. So if you imagine, we have a story that takes place in a town, not unlike any of the towns that we live in here, but the town doesn't have a name. It's never given a name. We don't know where it takes place. We don't know if it's Columbus, Ohio, or LaGrange, Georgia, or anywhere. So because it's not named, even though it may be familiar and it may seem like it's real, because it's not named, I imagine that Trudy Ludwig, she probably just imagined like your stereotypical a town in America, just kind of full of diversity and whatnot. So because there's not a town specifically named, and we can't tell that it's real, it's an imagined place. Now the next question is, when does it take place? I would say based on the technology that they use, I would go ahead and say that it takes place in current day. All right, let's move on, shall we? Let's move on to our last example, specifically talking about when a story takes place. Right? On the screen, we're talking about the Crane Wife, and I want you guys to think back and think about when the story takes place. Think long and hard. Think long and hard. You know what? Boom. It's going to be super easy. It takes place in ancient Japan. Quite literally, within the first sentence, it says, once in ancient Japan. Okay? But for those that don't know, the word ancient means long ago or very old. So if you didn't know what ancient meant, you'd have to maybe get a dictionary. However, as you read the story using context clues and really knowing about our modern world, if you notice the main character in the story, his job is to make sails for ships and weave those and sew those together. Well, most of you guys know that even though sailboats exist, making sails for ships is not a really high in demand job. Maybe you've seen some Discovery Channel videos or YouTube videos, like there's machines now that can sew those big giant sails much, much quicker than a human being could. So because I used my good comprehension skills, I can tell that this story takes place long ago. If I just happen to forget that the first sentence says once in ancient Japan. All right, let's check on over for a review, and then y'all can practice on your own. All right, so as a review, settings can be real or imagined places. Even though settings may seem familiar, but unless literally named as a real place, it's imagined. Okay? One of my favorite books in the entire world is a book called Lonesome Dove. And although it may seem like a real place and the author describes it in a lot of detail, there is not an actual there is not a town named Lonesome Dove. So it is a imagined place. Stories can be in the present day or in the past, and we can tell that by using our background knowledge can help us sometimes determine when a story is set. And I apologize. It looks like I got an extra R. A little pirate action there. Extra R's everywhere. But using our background knowledge can sometimes help us determine when a story is set. And that is really something that we can work on every day as we read. All right, guys, that is our lesson on determining whether a story can be in a real or imagined place or in the present day or in the past. All right, ta-ta for now.